Most nights, Cedar Creek High School stood quiet after dark, just another small-town building with squeaky lockers and fading trophy cases. But tonight, the silence was wrong. It wasn't the kind of quiet that made you think the day was over. It was the kind that made you feel watched. The janitor swore later he'd never forget that echo, a single bark, sharp and cutting, bouncing through the empty hallway before vanishing into the shadows. Hours earlier, Madison Clark had been alive, smiling, and humming under her breath as she straightened the rows of desks in room 12. She wasn't supposed to be the last one there. She wasn't supposed to vanish into thin air. Detective Ryan Cole pulled into the school parking lot just after midnight, headlights sweeping across an empty row of buses. He stepped out, tugging at the collar of his jacket, and the breath leaving his lips curled white against the autumn chill. At his side leapt down a German shepherd named Shadow, lean and scarred from his years serving overseas. Where Ryan went, Shadow went. Where Shadow stopped, Ryan paid attention. The call had come from the janitor, a jittery man named Harris who couldn't stop wringing his hands. He'd stayed late finishing the gym floor, noticed the lights still on in room 12, and walked in expecting to find Madison Clark sweeping the floor. Instead, he found her backpack propped neatly against a chair, her jacket still draped over the backrest. But no Madison. Door was locked from the inside, Harris stammered, pacing in front of the vending machine. No broken windows, no sign she left. I swear she was here. I saw her car still in the lot. Ryan had heard stories like this before. Runaways, teenage drama, even kids sneaking out through side doors. But the way Harris shook, the way his eyes darted toward the hallway every few seconds, told him this wasn't ordinary. Something about this was wrong. Shadow seemed to know it too. The moment his paws hit the linoleum, his ears shot forward and his nose lifted, drawing in every trace of scent. His low growl reverberated like a warning only he understood. They moved toward room 12. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, humming like gnats. Ryan's shoes echoed with each step, but Shadow padded silently, muscles coiled. At the doorway, Ryan's flashlight swept across the desks. Everything looked too neat, too staged. Madison's backpack hadn't been tossed aside like a teenager in a rush. It had been placed with care. Shadow froze halfway inside. His fur bristled, his head tilted. A single bark burst out of him, loud, urgent, directed at the far wall. Ryan's beam followed the dog's eyes until it landed on a painting. It wasn't much of a painting, just a faded landscape of Cedar Creek from the early 1900s. The kind of thing school boards hang up for nostalgia, not beauty. But Shadow wasn't staring at history. He was staring at the frame itself, lips curling, paws pressing hard against the tile. "Easy, boy," Ryan muttered, kneeling beside him. "What is it?" Shadow barked again, sharper this time, pawing at the baseboard beneath the painting. The sound cut through the room, bouncing off empty desks, rattling inside Ryan's chest. Harris hovered in the doorway, eyes wide. "What's he doing?" "It's just a picture." Ryan didn't answer. He trusted Shadow more than most people he knew. The dog's instincts had saved lives overseas. They didn't lie. He pulled his glove tighter and pressed a hand along the wall. The surface felt solid, but there was something faint, a shift of air, a temperature difference right around the frame. He leaned closer. Dust. Layers of paint so thick they'd smoothed over the edges of something that didn't belong. Shadow whined low in his throat, his nose pressed so hard to the corner that the paint flecked off. His paw dragged against the baseboard until his nail chipped. He didn't care. He wanted through. "Detective." Harris's voice cracked. "You don't think she's still?" Ryan raised a hand to silence him. His eyes stayed on Shadow, who now paced tight circles, barking once, then stopping, ears forward, body trembling. The dog's entire being was focused on that painting, as though behind it pulsed something alive. For a moment, Ryan felt the same thing. A presence. Not Madison exactly, but something waiting. He pushed that thought down and kept his voice calm. "We're not touching anything until I get forensics in here." Still, as he backed away, he couldn't shake the image. Madison's last moments, her backpack abandoned, her smile swallowed by silence, and Shadow barking at the only part of the room that didn't fit. The investigation moved slowly, too slowly for Ryan's liking. The school board argued about liability. The principal insisted the building was secure. Parents gathered in the parking lot with candles, whispering about ghosts and old rumors of tunnels under the school. Through it all, Shadow never gave up. Every shift change, every sweep of the halls, he returned to that room. He'd stand stiff in front of the painting and bark until the sound echoed down every corridor, daring anyone to ignore him. And that's the thing about stories like these. You're about to see how one dog's bark can shake an entire town. If you want to keep uncovering what Shadow finds next, make sure you're here for it. You won't want to miss what's coming. Late that night, Ryan stayed behind. He sat at a desk in the dark, papers scattered in front of him, his pen tapping. Madison's face stared up from the missing poster. 16. Honor roll student. No history of trouble. The school creaked with old age, pipes knocking in the walls. But then came another sound, the soft scuff of paws. Ryan looked up. Shadow stood at the painting again, his muzzle pressed close, breathing in, his body taut. Ryan rose, crossing the room. Still on it, huh? Shadow didn't move. He let out one bark, not frantic this time, but commanding. Ryan's flashlight cut across the frame, catching something he hadn't noticed before. Scratches. Tiny grooves along the floorboard, almost hidden beneath layers of wax. Like something had been dragged, or like someone had tried to claw their way out. His stomach tightened. He crouched low, pressing the light along the seam. The air shifted again, faint but real. Shadow whined, pawed once more, then sat back, gaze fixed on Ryan as if to say, "Don't stop now." Ryan drew in a slow breath, the sound echoing in the stillness of room 12. He didn't know what lay behind that wall, but he knew this much: Shadow wasn't letting it go. And neither was he. Somewhere in the silence, beneath the layers of plaster and paint, Madison's story was waiting to be found. The morning after Madison Clark's disappearance, Cedar Creek buzzed like a hive struck with a stick. Parents clutched their kids tighter, the school board fielded phone calls they couldn't answer, and every diner booth filled with whispers that carried like wildfire. In a small town like this, a missing teenager wasn't just news, it was a rupture that cut straight to the bone. Detective Ryan Cole drove down Main Street with Shadow's head poking out the passenger window, ears slicing through the cool October air. Every stoplight felt longer than it should, every glance from pedestrians another reminder of how badly the town wanted answers. He didn't blame them. He wanted them too. But the image from last night, Shadow's bark exploding against that faded landscape painting in room 12, stayed lodged in his head like a splinter he couldn't dig out. Ryan parked at the precinct and stepped inside, coffee in hand. The air smelled of burnt toast and printer ink, the low hum of phones already filling the space. Officer Daniels, barely out of his 20s, approached with a file under his arm. "Morning, detective. Got the initial sweep report from last night." Daniels flipped the folder open. "No forced entry. No fingerprints that don't belong. Security cameras are older than dirt, footage cuts out around 9 p.m. All we got is the janitor's statement." Ryan skimmed, unimpressed. Same dead ends, same tidy paperwork that didn't match the messy reality. He snapped the folder shut. "Where's forensics on that classroom?" "They're scheduled for later today. Principal Thompson's already breathing down our necks though. Says it's disrupting classes." Ryan muttered something under his breath. Kids sat in homerooms, pretending to focus on math worksheets, while Madison's mother hadn't slept since she got the call. And the principal's biggest concern was scheduling? Typical. Shadow brushed against his leg, nails clicking against the tile floor. His eyes weren't on the file or the officers. They were on the door. Waiting. "All right," Ryan said, setting the file down. "Let's go back." The school felt different in daylight, less haunted, more sterile. Teachers shuffled papers in their rooms, students whispered in hallways, trying not to look at the officers roaming their turf. But as Ryan and Shadow stepped into room 12, the shift in atmosphere was immediate. The sunlight pouring through dusty blinds caught flecks of chalk in the air, giving the room a hazy glow. Madison's backpack still sat untouched on the desk where Harris had found it. A few pencils lay scattered, as if frozen mid-use. And there, on the far wall, the painting. Shadow growled before Ryan even touched the doorknob. His ears pinned forward, body stiff. He pulled at the leash until Ryan gave in and unclipped it. Instantly, the dog crossed the room and sat in front of the frame, a low rumble vibrating in his chest. Officer Daniels followed them in, raising a brow. "He's at it again. I mean, it's just a picture, right?" Ryan crouched, letting his palm hover near the frame. The draft was still there. Faint, but enough. He tapped his knuckles against the wall. "Hello. Dogs don't bark at art, Daniels." Ryan straightened. "There's something here." Daniels shifted uneasily. "With respect, sir, the board's not going to like us tearing apart school property. We don't have a warrant." Ryan didn't answer right away. His eyes traced the edges of the painting, the uneven paint job, the subtle scrape marks along the floor. He thought of Madison's smile in a yearbook photo, the one her mother had pressed into his hands with trembling fingers. Shadow barked, sharp and unrelenting. Students in the hallway turned their heads at the sound. "Get forensics in here now," Ryan ordered. By afternoon, yellow tape stretched across the classroom door. Forensic techs moved like careful ants, dusting, photographing, logging every detail. Ryan leaned against a desk, arms folded, watching Shadow pace back and forth like a soldier on patrol. "Detective," one tech called out, gesturing with a gloved hand. "You'll want to see this." At the base of the painting, beneath layers of dust, they'd uncovered faint grooves in the floor. Parallel scratches, angled inward, as though something heavy had been shifted repeatedly over time. Ryan crouched, examining the marks. "Like a hinge." The tech nodded. "Or a door." Shadow barked again, tail rigid, nose pressed against the corner of the frame. Daniels let out a nervous laugh. "So, what, we've got ourselves a Scooby-Doo situation." Nobody laughed with him. Ryan stood, his voice low but firm. "Get me the school's blueprints. Now." The blueprint was an ancient roll of yellowing paper pulled from a filing cabinet in the superintendent's office. Spread across the principal's desk, it looked like a relic from another era, lines fading into obscurity. Ryan traced the outline of the building with his finger until he landed on room 12. His stomach sank. According to the blueprint, the wall behind the painting should have been solid. No hollow space. No gap. Nothing. He glanced at Shadow, who sat at his feet, staring intently at the paper as if he understood. Something was missing. Something they weren't meant to see. That night, Ryan returned alone. The building was empty again, stripped of its daytime noise. He didn't like breaking rules, but he liked unsolved disappearances even less. Shadow padded silently beside him, nails clicking against the linoleum like a metronome of tension. The painting loomed at the end of the flashlight's beam. Ryan removed his glove and pressed his bare hand against the frame. Cold. Colder than the surrounding wall. Shadow's growl rose again, deeper this time, his entire body trembling with the effort of restraint. "All right, buddy," Ryan whispered. "Let's see what you're trying to tell me." He pressed harder. The frame didn't budge. He ran his fingers along the edges, searching for an imperfection. Then he felt it, a slight indentation on the right side, small enough to miss under normal touch. Shadow barked, the sound exploding into the stillness. Ryan froze. There it was again. The draft. Stronger now, carrying the faintest hint of something stale. Something underground. He leaned closer, ear almost against the wall. And then he heard it. A sound so soft he almost convinced himself it wasn't real. A scrape. Like nails dragging faintly against wood. His breath caught. Madison. He pulled back sharply, heart thundering. His flashlight beam shook against the plaster. Shadow pressed his nose to the seam, whining now, urgent. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. He couldn't tear it open tonight, not without backup, not without the right tools. But he knew one thing, whatever was behind that wall wasn't just history. And Shadow knew it too. The next morning, Ryan called in favors. He wanted structural engineers, ground-penetrating radar, anything that could map what lay beyond. But bureaucracy slowed everything. The school board argued about costs. Lawyers muttered about property damage. Meanwhile, Madison's mother sat in her living room, clutching her daughter's yearbook photo, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Ryan stopped by to check on her. The Clark home was modest, filled with family photos and the smell of coffee that had gone cold hours before. Madison's mother answered the door in a sweater 2 sizes too big, her face pale. "Detective," she said, her voice trembling. Do you think she's still alive?" Ryan hesitated. He wanted to promise yes. But all he could give was honesty. "I think Shadow's leading us somewhere important. And I don't think he's wrong." Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, clinging to that thin thread of hope. Shadow sat at Ryan's side, ears perked, gaze steady. Almost as if he, too, was making a promise. Back at the school, rumors swirled. Students whispered about tunnels beneath the building, secret rooms, old legends passed down from class to class. Some said it was built on bootlegger hideouts from Prohibition. Others swore kids had gone missing before, their names lost to time. Ryan didn't buy legends. He bought evidence. But when Shadow barked again, this time not just at the painting, but down the hall at another section of wall, Ryan realized the dog was picking up more than one scent. Something bigger was hiding beneath Cedar Creek High. And the deeper they looked, the darker the truth was going to get. The third day after Madison Clark vanished, Cedar Creek felt like a town with its breath caught in its throat. The news vans parked along Main Street didn't help. Their satellite dishes towered above the gas station sign, reporters chasing anyone willing to give a quote. Parents kept their kids home from school. Teachers whispered in break rooms. Even the pastor at Sunday service shifted his sermon toward the dangers of shadows. But for Detective Ryan Cole, the only shadow that mattered was sitting in the passenger seat of his cruiser, head resting on the window frame, eyes sharp and unblinking. Shadow hadn't relaxed since they'd left room 12. His instincts stayed on high alert, like he knew they hadn't even begun to scratch the surface. Ryan pulled into the school lot, ignoring the cameras that tried to swarm him. He'd been through high-profile cases before, military tours overseas, kidnappings that made headlines, but something about this one burned colder. Madison wasn't just missing. She'd been taken in a way that didn't make sense. And when things don't make sense, Ryan knew to lean on the one partner who never second-guessed. "Ready to work?" he asked quietly. Shadow's ears flicked forward, his tail giving one deliberate thump against the seat. Inside the school, the tension was worse than yesterday. Students were herded between classes with escorts, teachers avoided eye contact, and the janitor Harris mopped the same patch of floor for the third time just to keep from pacing. Room 12 had been sealed off, crime scene tape cutting it off from curious eyes. Ryan ducked under and stepped inside, Shadow at his side. The air smelled faintly of bleach from the janitorial staff's half-hearted cleaning, but beneath it lingered something else. Stale. Like earth that hadn't been touched in years. Shadow moved immediately to the painting, nose pressed hard against the baseboard, then let out a deep, chesty bark that rattled the blinds. Ryan scanned the room. He wasn't alone today. A small team of engineers had come in with equipment that looked out of place in a high school classroom. Ground-penetrating radar, handheld scanners, and laptops blinking with neon maps. One of them, a wiry man named Keller, adjusted his glasses. "Detective, we've mapped most of this wall. It's supposed to be solid brick, but there's a gap about 2 feet behind here." He pointed at the section where Shadow sat rigid. "A hollow cavity. Runs vertical, then disappears underground." Ryan's jaw tightened. "So, not just bad construction." "Not even close," Keller said. "Whatever's behind here wasn't on the blueprints." Shadow barked again, claws scraping the tile. Ryan crouched, resting a hand on the dog's back. The fur quivered beneath his palm, muscles tight as wire. "Good boy," Ryan whispered. "They didn't open the wall that day." Legal red tape knotted the process. Warrants, permissions, liability arguments. The school board feared lawsuits more than they feared the truth. But Ryan wasn't blind to how much time they were losing. Madison had already been gone 72 hours. In cases like this, every hour mattered. Still, even as bureaucracy slowed them down, Shadow refused to let the trail go cold. That night, Ryan returned after hours, the keys borrowed from a sympathetic janitor. The hallways were darker than usual, the fluorescent bulbs dimmed to save electricity. His flashlight beam cut a thin line through the gloom as Shadow padded forward, nails clicking in steady rhythm. When they entered room 12, the air felt heavier, as if the walls themselves knew he was back. Shadow moved instantly to the painting again. But this time, something was different. Instead of barking, he lowered his body close to the floor and sniffed hard. His nose dragged along the baseboard, pausing at one particular corner. Then he whined, a sound Ryan rarely heard from him. Ryan knelt, shining the light along the edge. At first it looked like dust. Then he realized what it was: scratches. Small, frantic gouges in the wood, the kind made by fingernails, not tools. His throat tightened. Madison. He brushed his gloved fingers over the grooves. The thought of her clawing at the floor, desperate to get out, made his stomach twist. Shadow pressed closer, pawing at the wall until his pads left faint smears of blood from the chipped nail he'd split days earlier. He didn't care. He wanted through. Ryan swallowed hard. "All right, partner. We'll get in there." The next morning, Ryan met with Principal Thompson in the front office. Thompson was a tall, balding man with a tie knotted too tightly and sweat glistening along his temple. "Detective, I understand the urgency," he said, voice quivering. "But tearing apart school property, what message does that send to the community? This is a place of learning, not a demolition site." Ryan leaned forward across the desk. "A student is missing. A 16-year-old girl who was last seen in this building. And your concern is drywall. Thompson's face reddened. We can't afford. Ryan cut him off. You can't afford another missing child either. The office went silent. Outside the door, Shadow sat waiting, ears perked, as though he knew every word being said. Permission finally came through, thanks to a judge who had a daughter Madison's age. By late afternoon, a small crew stood ready with pry bars and hammers. Reporters circled the parking lot, cameras aimed like rifles at the school doors. Ryan stood in room 12, Shadow at his side, as the first hammer struck the edge of the painting. Dust puffed into the air, coating the desks in a fine gray film. The frame groaned under the pressure until it popped loose, revealing a section of wall that didn't match the rest. Shadow barked furiously, lunging forward against the leash. His paws hit the plaster, claws raking down until bits of white crumbled away. "All right, hold him back," one worker muttered. But Ryan didn't move. He kept his eyes on Shadow, because the dog wasn't barking at random. He was barking at the seam itself, the invisible line where paint had concealed hinges no one else had noticed. "Here," Ryan said, pointing. "Focus on this section." The workers struck again, harder this time. The plaster cracked, then caved inward with a shudder. A wave of stale air rushed out, smelling of damp earth and something metallic. The room fell silent. Shadow growled low, head pressed into the opening, body trembling with anticipation. Ryan lifted his flashlight, shining it into the darkness. A narrow passage sloped downward, the walls lined with rotting wood beams. Cobwebs clung to the corners like shrouds. The air tasted wrong, stale, suffocating, alive with secrets. They didn't go in that night. Protocol required mapping the space first, ensuring it was safe. But Ryan could hardly sleep knowing what lay behind that wall. Shadow paced his house like a caged lion, whining at the door until Ryan gave up trying to rest. By morning, they were back with more gear, ropes, lanterns, masks. The workers had widened the opening, enough for a man to fit through. Ryan clipped a lead onto Shadow's harness, though he knew the dog would drag him if he had to. "Easy, boy," he said, voice steady though his pulse wasn't. Shadow barked once, sharply, and leapt forward. The beam of Ryan's flashlight caught what looked like old crates stacked against the damp wall just beyond the threshold. Faded lettering hinted at decades past. A faint drip echoed from somewhere deeper. Shadow whined, pulling harder toward the blackness. Ryan tightened his grip on the leash. "Not yet. We're doing this right." But in that moment, standing at the edge of a hidden passage no one knew existed, he felt the ground shift beneath the weight of truth. Madison hadn't just disappeared. She'd been taken somewhere no one was supposed to find. And Shadow, relentless and unyielding, had dragged that truth into the light. By the time the opening was cleared enough to step through, the sun had dipped behind the horizon, leaving Cedar Creek High cloaked in twilight. The last of the reporters had been pushed back behind barricades, though their lenses still glowed like unblinking eyes. Inside, the school felt abandoned, every creak of the floor echoing like a confession. Detective Ryan Cole stood at the threshold of the newly exposed passage with Shadow at his side. Dust coated his jacket, and a faint chill leaked from the darkness beyond the wall, brushing against his skin like fingers of ice. The dog was restless, his tail rigid, his nose pulling hard at the leash. "You sure about this?" Officer Daniels asked from behind, his voice betraying nerves. He held a flashlight that trembled ever so slightly. "What if the whole thing collapses? Looks like it hasn't been touched in decades." Ryan adjusted his own light, the beam slicing into the void. "If it collapses, we'll deal with it. But I'm not waiting another night." Shadow barked once, sharp and commanding, as if to second the motion. With that, Ryan ducked his head and stepped through. The air changed instantly. Inside the passage, the smell was thick, earth, mold, something metallic and old. His boots crunched against dirt, and above him, wooden beams sagged like tired shoulders. Shadow moved ahead, every muscle coiled, his nose brushing the ground, sniffing every inch. The space was tighter than Ryan expected. The walls closed in, narrow enough that his shoulders scraped wood and stone. He swept his light across the corridor and caught glimpses of spiderwebs that glistened like silver thread, undisturbed for years. Daniels muttered from behind, "This doesn't make sense." Why would anyone build this under a school? Ryan didn't answer. He had his own questions, questions he didn't want to give voice to yet. Shadow suddenly stopped. His body stiffened, ears pointing straight ahead. Then he let out a growl so deep it reverberated in Ryan's chest. Ryan raised the flashlight. The beam caught on something at the edge of the dirt floor. A small, frayed ribbon, pale blue, snagged on a rusty nail protruding from a support beam. His stomach clenched. Madison's mother had shown him a photo of her daughter at a school dance. She'd worn her hair tied back with a ribbon just like this. Ryan crouched, carefully removing it, bagging it for evidence. Shadow barked once, his nose pressed to the same spot, then turned his head down the corridor. "Good boy," Ryan whispered, his throat tight. "You found her trail." They pressed deeper. The tunnel sloped downward, the air growing colder, damper. Drops of water plinked steadily from somewhere above, echoing like a metronome. Shadow sniffed along the walls, his body weaving from side to side. Suddenly, he stopped at a crate shoved against the dirt wall. Ryan dragged it into the light. The wood splintered under his touch, rotted with age. Inside were old books, water-damaged and swollen. He flipped one open carefully. Yearbooks. Cedar Creek High, 1950s and 60s editions. "What the hell?" Daniels whispered over his shoulder. Ryan flipped through brittle pages, eyes scanning photos of smiling students frozen in time. Most of them bore signatures and notes. But scattered among the pages were names crossed out with heavy ink, whole faces scratched over. Shadow whined, pawing at the crate until Ryan pulled another book free. This one had loose pages tucked inside, old student IDs. Faded. Some torn. His pulse quickened. Madison wasn't the first. He closed the book and shoved it back. "Keep moving." The corridor twisted again, forcing them lower, until they reached a chamber that opened wider than the passage. The ceiling arched in crude stone, and the floor bore marks of heavy dragging. Ryan's flashlight swept across the walls and caught something that froze him mid-step. Symbols. Carved deep into the stone. Circles intersecting with triangles, strange runes that didn't belong in a school basement. They looked old, deliberate. Daniels stepped back. "This is some cult stuff, man. I'm telling you, this is bad." Shadow barked again, but not at the carvings. His nose was fixed on a pile in the corner. Ryan crossed, every step heavier than the last, and aimed the beam down. Shoes. A cluster of them, small and worn, coated in dust. Children's shoes, stacked like forgotten relics. Ryan's chest constricted. He crouched, reaching for one, and flipped it over. The rubber sole bore a faint name written in marker, almost erased with time. A girl's name he didn't recognize. Shadow whined, pawing hard at the pile until dirt scattered across the floor. Ryan grabbed his collar, pulling him back gently, heart hammering. This was bigger than Madison. Much bigger. They moved on, deeper into the tunnel. Ryan forced his mind to focus on the present, on Madison's ribbon, on Shadow's nose leading the way. Another 100 feet, and the passage narrowed again. Ryan had to crouch low, the ceiling brushing his back. Shadow didn't hesitate, squeezing through, his nails scraping rock. On the other side, the air shifted. Warmer, with a faint current, as if connected to the outside somehow. Ryan swung the beam left, then right, until it landed on a wooden door half buried in dirt. The hinges were rusted, the planks warped, but the outline was unmistakable. Shadow barked wildly now, lunging at the door, teeth snapping at the wood. Ryan tried to hold him back, but the dog was relentless, claws shredding chunks off until splinters rained down. "Easy," Ryan commanded, pulling hard. But Shadow wasn't listening. His instincts told him what Ryan feared. Someone, or something, was beyond that door. They didn't break it open that night. The structure was too unstable, and the risk too high without reinforcement. But Ryan marked the spot, his mind racing. Madison had to be near. Every instinct screamed it. Back above ground, the night air felt thin, the stars distant. Reporters swarmed him the moment he emerged, shouting questions, flashing cameras. "Detective Cole, what did you find? Is Madison alive? Were other students taken?" He didn't answer. Shadow sat at his side, chest heaving, formatted with dust, but his eyes blazed with purpose. Ryan knew one thing: they were close. And if Shadow's unrelenting drive meant anything, the truth, no matter how dark, was about to break open. That night, Ryan sat alone in his kitchen, ribbon on the table in front of him. He stared at it until the coffee in his mug went cold. Madison's mother deserved answers. Madison deserved rescue. And somewhere beneath Cedar Creek High, the dog who never gave up had already pointed the way. Ryan reached down, scratching behind Shadow's ears. The dog leaned into the touch, eyes still fixed on the door only he could see. "We'll get her," Ryan murmured. "I promise." Shadow's tail thumped once against the floor. And in the silence that followed, Ryan swore he could still hear the faint scratching behind the wall, the echo of someone waiting. The door sat heavy in Ryan's thoughts all night, a crooked scar of wood and rust buried under the school. He could still smell the stale air leaking from the seams, hear Shadow's furious barks ricocheting through the tunnel. Madison's ribbon rested on his dresser, the pale blue fabric like a silent dare every time his eyes landed on it. By dawn, Ryan had made his decision. No more delays. No more paperwork tangles and debates. They would open that door today. Shadow seemed to sense the resolve before Ryan even grabbed his coat. The German shepherd waited at the door, body taut, ears forward, as if he'd been awake the entire night too. "All right, partner," Ryan muttered, locking the house behind him. "Let's finish what we started." The school grounds were eerily quiet when they arrived, a sharp contrast to the chaos of news vans the day before. The board had restricted access, keeping the public at bay, but that didn't make the halls inside any less suffocating. Ryan's boots echoed down the linoleum as he and Shadow passed classroom after classroom, empty save for forgotten textbooks and stale air. Room 12 loomed ahead, its door still draped in yellow tape. Ryan ducked under, Shadow slipping through with ease. The painting was gone now, the hole in the wall widened enough to reveal the dark throat of the passage beyond. Daniels waited with a team of officers, tools in hand, crowbars, portable lights, even a hydraulic spreader normally reserved for car crashes. He looked pale, though, like he'd rather be anywhere but here. "You're really doing this," Daniels said, adjusting his grip on a flashlight. Ryan didn't hesitate. "We don't have a choice." Shadow barked once, sharp and commanding, then lunged toward the hole as if to prove the point. The descent into the passage felt heavier this time, weighed down by the anticipation of what lay ahead. Portable lights lit the dirt walls in harsh beams, shadows stretching like skeletal fingers across the stone. The air was thick, damp, and smelled faintly of rusting metal. Shadow pulled hard against the leash, leading them deeper until the wooden door came into view. It looked worse now, half collapsed from age, its surface warped and riddled with splinters. Rust streaked the hinges like blood. "Careful," Ryan ordered. "This thing's been sitting for decades." The team worked quickly, bracing the frame with steel bars before wedging the hydraulic spreader into the seam. The machine groaned as pressure built, wood splintering in a sharp crack. Shadow barked furiously, teeth bared, claws scraping the dirt floor. Ryan held him back, his own pulse hammering as the door gave way inch by inch. With one final groan, the hinges snapped. The door swung inward, belching a wave of stale, suffocating air that smelled of earth and something darker, like iron and rot. Everyone froze. Then Shadow surged forward, nose low, barking into the darkness with unrelenting force. Ryan stepped inside first, flashlight sweeping across the new chamber. It was larger than the first, its ceiling arching high with stone, the floor uneven and damp. The light caught on objects scattered along the ground, old crates, broken desks, scraps of paper clinging to the dirt. But it was what lined the walls that stopped him cold. Photographs. Hundreds of them, tacked into the stone with rusted nails. Black and white portraits, color snapshots, Polaroids curling at the edges. All of them were faces, students. Some smiling in yearbook poses, others candid shots from classrooms, sports teams, dances. Daniels stepped up beside him, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jesus Christ!" Ryan's stomach churned. He swept the beam across the collection and spotted names scribbled beneath some photos. Others had only dates. And some had nothing at all, just hollow eyes staring back from yellowed paper. Shadow growled low, pressing forward into the chamber, nose twitching. He circled the center of the room before stopping at a crate half buried in dirt. His paw struck it once, then again, until the wood cracked. Ryan knelt, prying it open. Inside lay student IDs, dozens of them, stacked in neat bundles with rubber bands that had long since crumbled into dust. Each card bore a photo, a name, and a date that seemed to stop abruptly, like someone had cut their story short. Ryan bagged what he could, his hands trembling. Madison's case wasn't just about one missing girl. It was part of a chain, one that stretched back decades. Shadow barked suddenly, jerking Ryan's attention to the far corner. His flashlight beam followed, landing on a small wooden desk, its surface scarred by knife marks. On top sat a spiral notebook, edges curling with moisture. Ryan approached cautiously, flipping it open. The handwriting inside was jagged, hurried. Notes about secrets, punishments, and the voices behind the wall. Dates ran across the margins, years apart, as though different students had written in it over time. His hand tightened on the notebook. This wasn't just a room. It was a record. And then Shadow's body stiffened. His nose pressed against the dirt floor, hackles raised. He barked twice, then began digging with frantic force. Ryan dropped to his knees, sweeping his light where the dog clawed. At first it was just dirt. Then something pale appeared, a fragment of bone. The chamber fell silent. Even Daniels stopped breathing. Ryan brushed carefully, revealing the curve of a jawbone. Small. Child-sized. Shadow whined, his paw still scraping as if unwilling to stop. Ryan pulled him back gently, his own chest heavy. Enough, boy. You've done your job. But Shadow didn't look away. His eyes stayed locked on the ground, on what lay beneath, as though telling Ryan this was only the beginning. They sealed the chamber after that, marking it as an active crime scene. Teams were called in, experts summoned, evidence bagged with shaking hands. But none of it dulled the pounding in Ryan's head. Madison was still missing. And while Shadow had led them to a buried history, he hadn't yet led them to the girl who still had a chance. Later that night, Ryan stood in the parking lot, the cool air biting at his skin. Shadow sat at his side, chest still heaving, his fur dusted with dirt. The dog's eyes were locked on the school building, ears pricked, as though he could still hear something Ryan couldn't. Ryan rested a hand on his back. We'll find her. You hear me? We're not stopping here. Shadow gave a single bark, sharp and resolute, carrying into the night like a vow. The photographs on the chamber walls haunted Ryan long after he left the school that night. They burned into his memory like afterimages, dozens of young faces staring back in silence. Faces that should have been filling classrooms, laughing in cafeterias, growing up and growing old. Instead, they'd been nailed to stone and forgotten. He couldn't sleep. Even when he closed his eyes, he saw the pale ribbon Madison had worn, fluttering in his hand like a question with no answer. Shadow lay near the door, body rigid, ears twitching at every sound. The dog hadn't truly rested since the investigation began, and Ryan knew better than to expect him to. At dawn, Ryan poured himself stale coffee, the bitter taste scraping his throat. He stared at the file spread across his table, student reports, timelines, missing person notices yellowed with age. The stack had grown overnight, and still it wasn't enough. Madison was out there. He felt it. And Shadow knew it. Ready? Ryan asked, not because he expected hesitation, but because speaking it out loud made him feel steadier. Shadow rose instantly, tail stiff, eyes bright with a determination Ryan had come to lean on like oxygen. When they returned to Cedar Creek High, the place felt even heavier than before. The crime scene tape was tighter, the guard stricter, the board more hostile. The superintendent had nearly pulled the plug after the photographs were discovered, worried about public panic and school reputation. But Ryan didn't care about reputation. He cared about the sound of nails against wood he'd thought he heard in the passage. He cared about Shadow's frantic digging, his body language screaming that Madison was closer than anyone realized. The chamber was colder today. Their breath fogged in the air, mingling with dust stirred by the forensics team still cataloging evidence. Shadow ignored the crates, the photographs, the bones. He paced in tight circles, nose low, until he stopped at the farthest wall. Ryan followed, flashlight beam sweeping across the rough stone. What do you got, boy? Shadow's paw struck the dirt floor with a sharp scrape. Then he barked, once, twice, 3 times, loud enough to echo through the chamber. Daniels, standing near the entrance, flinched. Not again. But Ryan was already kneeling. His hand pressed against the wall where Shadow's nose traced. The surface looked solid, uneven stone pressed together with crumbling mortar. But the draft was there, faint, almost lost in the damp air, but enough. Another passage, Ryan muttered. Shadow barked again, pawing harder now, claws leaving trails in the dirt. By mid-afternoon, a team of specialists had been brought in with drills and chisels. The superintendent argued, red-faced, that the school couldn't withstand more digging around. Ryan shut him down with a single sentence. You want to explain to Madison's mother why we stopped 10 feet from where she might be alive? The man fell silent. Shadow lay against the wall, every muscle quivering as the drills bit into stone. Dust clouded the chamber, coating Ryan's jacket, but the dog didn't move. He never blinked, never turned his head. His nose stayed locked on the wall, as if he could already smell the answer behind it. Finally, after hours of labor, a hollow crack echoed through the chamber. A section of stone broke inward, revealing a gap just wide enough for light to pass through. The air that rushed out was colder than anything they'd felt yet, carrying the scent of mildew and something sour that turned Ryan's stomach. Shadow surged to his feet, barking wildly, pulling so hard at the leash that Ryan had to brace against the wall. Daniels gagged into his sleeve. God, it smells like something died in there. Ryan kept his eyes on the opening. Or someone still fighting to live. Once the gap was widened, they squeezed through into another tunnel. This one was narrower, the ceiling sloping so low Ryan had to duck. The dirt floor was uneven, scattered with debris, old boards, scraps of paper, even a child's shoe long since rotted. Shadow led the way, nails clicking softly, his nose twitching with every step. His tail was rigid, his ears rotating like radar dishes. The beam of Ryan's flashlight caught faint scratches along the walls. Words, carved by hand. Some were incomplete, others shaky and desperate. Help. Trapped. Don't forget us. Ryan's chest tightened. His throat felt raw as he traced the grooves with his gloved fingers. Whoever had carved these messages had believed someone might come. And maybe, just maybe, Madison had done the same. Shadow barked suddenly, jerking Ryan out of his thoughts. The dog darted ahead, pulling him around a bend. The tunnel opened into a small chamber barely large enough to stand upright. And there, on the ground, was a backpack. Ryan's heart stopped. It was Madison's. The same one Harris had found in room 12, but this wasn't a duplicate. This was different. A second bag. A backup she'd kept. Inside were notebooks, a phone charger, a pair of gym shoes. All recent. She's been here, Ryan whispered. Shadow pressed his nose into the bag, inhaling deeply before letting out a low whine. Then he barked twice, sharply, and turned his head toward another corner of the chamber. Ryan followed his gaze. The dirt there looked disturbed, recently moved. He dropped to his knees, brushing it aside with gloved hands. At first, he thought it was another crate. But then he saw the wood, planks arranged into a makeshift cover, hastily nailed together. He pried one loose. Beneath, the ground sloped into another tunnel, darker and steeper than the rest. Daniels paled. How deep does this thing go? Ryan's voice was steady. Far enough that someone wanted to keep it hidden. Shadow barked, straining at the leash, his entire body aimed at the opening like an arrow pulled taut. They regrouped briefly, calling in for reinforcements, but Ryan couldn't ignore the urgency in Shadow's movements. Every second the dog whined, pawing the dirt, was another second Madison might be slipping away. Light it up, Ryan ordered. The team dropped glow sticks into the tunnel. Their green glow illuminated rough steps cut into dirt, descending sharply out of sight. Ryan clipped a longer lead onto Shadow's harness. You take point, he whispered, though he knew the dog already understood. Shadow plunged forward without hesitation, his paws sure on the uneven descent. Ryan followed close, the beam of his flashlight shaking against the narrow walls. Daniels cursed softly behind them, each breath ragged with nerves. The air grew heavier with every step. Moisture clung to the walls, dripping onto their shoulders. The smell intensified, mold, decay, something chemical that burned the nose. Then Shadow stopped. His body went rigid, ears flat, teeth bared. He let out a bark that was less command, more warning. Ryan swung the light forward. The tunnel ended at a door, steel this time, not wood. Heavy, industrial, out of place in a school basement. Its surface was streaked with rust, but the padlock hanging from the latch gleamed newer, as if it had been replaced recently. Daniels swallowed hard. "That's not from the 1950s. "No," Ryan said, voice grim. "It's not." Shadow lunged at the door, barking furiously, his paws scraping the metal until sparks flew from his nails. His body shook with rage, his growls filling the tunnel like thunder. Ryan's chest pounded. Whatever was behind that steel door wasn't history. It was present. Madison could be in there. They didn't open it that night. The steel was too thick, the lock too strong. But Ryan placed both hands on the cold surface, leaning close, listening. For a long moment, there was only silence. And then, faintly, so faintly he thought he might be imagining it, came a sound. A muffled cry. Ryan jerked back, eyes wide. Shadow barked again, furious, insistent, pressing his entire body against the door. Daniels whispered, "Tell me you heard that." Ryan's voice was rough, steady only because it had to be. "I heard it." He looked down at Shadow, whose eyes blazed with relentless fire. "We're coming back tomorrow," Ryan promised. "With everything we've got." Shadow barked once more, sharp and certain. And in that damp, suffocating tunnel, Ryan knew the truth. Madison was still alive. The steel door loomed like the final page of a book no one wanted to read, its cold surface glinting under the flashlight beams. Ryan Cole stood with one hand pressed against the metal, listening to the echo of that faint cry he'd sworn he heard the night before. The sound had been muffled, buried deep in layers of rust and secrecy, but it was enough. Madison was alive. He could feel it in his bones, and Shadow's relentless barking confirmed it. "Bring the spreader," Ryan ordered, his voice cutting through the damp tunnel. The officers scrambled, hauling down the hydraulic equipment they'd used before. Daniel swore under his breath, muttering about cave-ins and unstable ground, but Ryan ignored him. Fear had no place here, not when a 16-year-old girl's life hung in the balance. Shadow clawed at the door, teeth gnashing against steel as if he could rip it open himself. His growls reverberated like thunder trapped underground. Ryan crouched, gripping the dog's harness. "Easy, boy. We'll get her. You've done your job." Shadow's body trembled, but he stilled under Ryan's hand. His amber eyes locked onto the detective's face, then flicked back to the door. He was ready. The machine groaned to life, its jaws clamping down on the padlock. Metal screamed as the lock bent, then shattered, falling into the dirt with a dull thud. The officers braced as Ryan and Daniels pulled the door wide. The stench hit them first. Damp air mixed with mildew and something acrid that burned the throat. Ryan pushed forward, flashlight beam slicing into the darkness. The chamber beyond was larger than the others, carved out with crude precision, the walls reinforced with rotting beams. At first, it looked empty. Then the beam landed on the far corner. A girl. Madison Clark sat huddled against the wall, her knees pulled to her chest, her hair tangled and face pale under the harsh light. Her wrists were bound with rope, her lips cracked, but her eyes, wide, terrified, alive, locked onto them the moment the light found her. "Madison," Ryan breathed, his chest tightening. She flinched, as if she didn't believe what she was seeing. Shadow barked once, loud and commanding, then surged forward, dragging Ryan with him. The dog pressed his nose against her lap, whining, tail thrashing as if to say you're safe now. Tears spilled down Madison's cheeks as she buried her hands in his fur. I thought nobody would come," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Ryan dropped to his knees, cutting the ropes free. "We're here. You're safe." But the chamber wasn't just Madison's prison. As his light swept the room again, Ryan saw evidence scattered across tables and shelves. Files, boxes, more photographs. A grotesque archive of decades of victims. Names scribbled in ledgers, Polaroids clipped with dates. "Jesus," Daniels muttered behind him, gagging into his sleeve. This This is a graveyard. Ryan ignored him, keeping his focus on Madison. Did you see who put you here? Did you hear anything? Madison shook her head weakly, clinging to Shadow as though the dog's heartbeat was the only steady thing in the world. It was someone from school. I heard their voice. But I couldn't see. Her words cut like a knife. Someone connected to the school had been behind this. Someone trusted. Someone who thought no one would ever dig deep enough to uncover it. Shadow barked again, this time toward a side door barely visible in the corner. Ryan swung his beam that way, catching movement, a shadow darting out of sight. Freeze! Ryan barked, his gun rising. But it was too late. Whoever had been there bolted down another tunnel, their footsteps fading fast into the darkness. Ryan cursed. He wanted to chase, but Madison came first. He holstered the weapon, lifting her gently. "We've got you," he said firmly. "We're taking you home." The climb back through the tunnels was brutal. Madison was weak, her weight sagging against Ryan's arms. The officers cleared the way, glow sticks marking the path, while Shadow stayed glued to Madison's side, whining whenever she stumbled. When they finally emerged into room 12, the flood of fresh air nearly knocked Ryan to his knees. Madison blinked under the harsh fluorescent lights, her hand still tangled in Shadow's fur. Outside, reporters swarmed, flashes popping like fireworks. But Ryan shielded Madison, pushing past them into the waiting ambulance. Madison's mother stood there, trembling, tears streaking her face. The reunion was raw, visceral. Madison fell into her mother's arms, sobbing, her words lost against the woman's shoulder. Shadow stood at their feet, tail wagging furiously, his nose pressed against Madison's leg as though refusing to let her vanish again. The crowd outside erupted, half in relief, half in horror at the scope of what had been uncovered. Cedar Creek would never be the same. Later, Ryan stood on the school steps, dirt still clinging to his jacket. Reporters shouted questions. Was it a staff member? Are there more victims? What happens next? He didn't answer. Some truths couldn't be rushed. But he knew one thing: thanks to Shadow, Madison was alive, and the walls of Cedar Creek High had given up their darkest secret. Daniels approached, his face pale. "Detective, those files down there? They go back almost 70 years. Whoever started this, whoever kept it going, they had help." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Then we don't stop here. We follow it. Every name. Every lead. We burn the whole thing down." Shadow barked once, sharp and resolute, his gaze fixed on the school like he knew this wasn't over. Ryan reached down, resting his hand on the dog's head. "You saved her," he said softly. "And you saved a lot more than that." That night, Ryan finally sat in his kitchen again, but this time Madison's ribbon wasn't just a reminder of loss. It was proof of survival. Madison was home, alive, because one dog refused to stop barking at a wall no one else believed mattered. Shadow lay at his feet, chest rising and falling in slow, steady breaths. For the first time in days, the dog slept soundly. Ryan stared at him with something close to awe. He'd worked with K9S his entire career, but Shadow was different. Shadow didn't just sniff out drugs or track down criminals. He carried instincts that cut deeper, that saw truths people tried to bury. And in Cedar Creek, those instincts had unearthed a horror that would ripple through the town for years to come. But tonight, at least, one girl was safe. And that's where we'll leave Madison's story for now. Thank you for following this journey all the way through. But I have to ask you, what would you have done if you were the one standing in front of that wall, listening to a dog bark at something no one else believed was there? Would you have trusted him? Or walked away?